I want to jump on the veteran narrative identity as I go to this. And this is just, bear with me, this is my theory, and these are going to be my last slides. This is where I see our current situation from my own lived experience and lived experience of so many other people that we've engaged with. Over on the left-hand side of the screen is the current services, and be that the current focus or the current delivery requirements, and on the right, the current self, again, current focus. I don't think anyone else is going to argue that the clinical requirements, be they psychologists, be they claims to DVA, and again, sorry, on a graduating scale of non-qualified through to level of qualifications sloping from the bottom to the top, our clinical requirements are absolutely overloaded. Our wait times are huge. You can't get in to see a psychologist, all these sorts of things. And when people don't get into clinical services, they fall straight down. And as you can see, when they fall down, there's so much more space that they're not being captured at the bottom. We have these wraparound services that are frantically trying to get in there and support underneath, but what they are not being supported by is the wellness aspect down the bottom. And the wellness aspect, I just relate it directly over to the self pyramid on the other side, whereby we are really focused on mental health as being a clinical issue. And while I see a psychologist and a psychiatrist, the number one health and support and treatment and rehabilitation I get from is engaging with my old community, my peers, my friends, the people that I serve with, my support network. Before it saves up to require mental health and clinical support, I'm able to conduct mental daily health sessions, mental fitness sessions, by just actually being a bit more vulnerable and open in those conversations. But we're putting so much focus on entering into this pyramid at the very top clinical piece and overwhelming that, whereas so many, and I'm adamant of this, so many of these issues can be resolved if we get back to putting so much more of a focus on the bottom of the pyramid and focusing on our all-round health and wellness. And that comes from community. At the moment, and I myself have been a big advocate for this, the best thing we need to do is get people new purpose. I am great at getting purpose, and I am great at embedding my identity in that purpose. But when you lose that purpose, and you will lose that purpose because shit changes, if you don't have a community as a foundation to fall back to, you fall off the cliff. And that's what happens when we lose that purpose, we fall off the cliff. Whereas I have seen that when we have a community as a strong foundation and are able to re-identify within that community, purpose pops up left, right and centre. And the amount of people in this room who will have been, I applied for over 200 jobs online, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you have word of mouth conversations, there's jobs popping up left, right and centre because people actually value the capabilities that are within your identity that you haven't yet identified with. But on the larger systemic piece, this identity piece is something we still have to work on from the ground up, because the veteran identity is still not there. We are still not grasped with what the identity of a veteran is. We have the DVA determination, and I've been feeding that to people one day as service, this, that and the other, but just go out to Anzac Day, and I saw some young guys taking their medals off and asked them why, because they didn't have an ICB or an ACB above those medals. We are the worst to each other. And until we can actually help people identify with the fact that they served and support each other in this situation, we can continue to fracture each other and really erode at that central layer that is that identity. And some people are never going to be able to escape above the ground level of progression because they are not comfortable with who they are. Because we, as a community who should be the most supportive, are not supporting them to do so with the purpose of progressing ourselves collectively. And this is where I say that mental fitness, mental health, at the moment, there's such a heavy focus on mental health. Whereas all that I have learned is that the more effort I put into mental fitness, I'm now seeing my psychologist and psychiatrist once a month. My medication's dropped way off because I've reconnected with my people, and every time there's a problem, I speak to people about this, and for me, veterans and anyone at the community level, engaging directly up to the clinical level, engaging directly up to DVA, engaging directly up to ComSuper, this is where you actually start to cause the biggest clinical issues. I spent 18 months advocating myself directly to DVA, thinking, I can do this. And that's what drove me to insanity. And now I'm on to my third advocate, and Bob's here in the room, because we don't have our community. The other day at the gym, there was a guy who's discharging, and he's put all of his paperwork in through DVA, but he still hasn't put through his ComSuper. And he's never even knew that that's a completely separate way to do it. And we'll come to this later, and that's just simple pathways. And we are all learning these things from having these conversations with each other, but we haven't formalised this into an SOP template for people to go through. And that's not within defence or within JTA, that's within the veteran community. Because there is the in-country brief, and then there's the brief in-country. And we are in-country, and we need to provide that brief.